A few years ago, I thought music was just done for me. Nothing felt exciting anymore. Nothing felt new and fresh and interesting. And I just started to figure that maybe music was one of those things that the passion just fades with age. But I was wrong. Today, I'm more in love with music than I've ever been, and it didn't happen by accident. In this video, I'm going to share 5 things that helped me rebuild that connection and rekindle my passion for music after years of feeling totally disconnected from it. And if you've ever been there too, this one's for you. Music was everything to me growing up, but somehow life got in the way, and for 15 years I barely listened to anything new. Now I'm 40 and I'm diving back in, one song, one album at a time, and sharing that journey with you. Welcome to Hendy Creek. I grew up absolutely passionate about music. From the time I was young, I was listening to the stuff that my dad was playing. My dad is a musician, he's a drummer, and I grew up with the things that he loved, and I developed a love for those things too. And eventually, after not too much time, I started to develop my own tastes and interests in different types of music that spoke to me. And as I grew up, as I got into my early teens, I was learning how to play instruments too. I joined bands, I was in bands all through high school and college, and music was a huge part of my life. It wasn't just a part of my life. It was part of who I was. But after college, that kind of changed. And I'm still not entirely sure why. But by the time I was about 23, I kind of just stopped listening to music. And that lasted for a good 15 years. From the time I was about 23 until I was in my late 30s, about 38. I really didn't listen to music at all. But as I got into my later 30s, it really started to bug me. It was a hole in my life, and it felt like something was missing. And it was. That big part of my identity wasn't there anymore. And I knew that if I wanted to get it back, it was going to take some work. So I decided to put in the effort. I decided to find a way to at least try to rekindle that passion for music. And I'm happy to say that it's been successful, incredibly successful. And I've kind of gotten to a point where I've realized that there were 5 things that I've done in the last couple of years that have sparked that, reconnection with music. And those are the 5 things that I want to share here today for anyone who might be in a similar situation where they feel like they've lost that passion for music, but they really want to reconnect again. But that's enough of an intro. You should have a good enough idea of where I'm coming from with this. So let's dive in. I'm going to lead off with the number one biggest, most important one, at least for me. And that is to change your mindset about how you approach music. And by that, I mean, you got to be open to new things. You got to be open to more things than you may have previously been. I'm very, very guilty of that. I think one of the reasons that I kind of lost that connection with music was because I had painted myself into a corner with the type of music that I identified with. If you had asked me when I was 20 years old, what kind of music do you like or what kind of music do you listen to, I would have had a very specific, concrete answer with examples to back it up. And I would have said, I listen to this and I don't listen to that. And I think that was a big part of what hurt me because I was excluding an entire range of music, an entire world of music that was out there for me to connect with. And so the biggest thing when I first came back to music was I made a point to say, nothing's off limits. I'm not going to shut anything down. Things that I had previously written off, I'm going to give a chance again if I come across them. New things that come on my plate, I'm not going to immediately decide, it's this genre, that's not for me. I'm not going to bother with it. And I got to tell you, it's been super helpful in rekindling that connection, that passion with music. And to go along with that shift in mindset, I think the other shift that I had to make was to decide to not just sit back and wait for music to come to me. Wait for music to make that connection to me emotionally, musically, however it does. Sometimes you have to meet the music halfway. The music is where it is, and you can just stay where you are and you can say, I'm here, the music's there, that's not for me. Or you can put a little effort into saying, I'm going to take a few steps towards that, even though it's not something that I necessarily connect with where I am right now. But if I put in a little bit of thought and effort into, the context of that music, maybe it will be something that I can kind of enjoy. I think for me personally, the biggest example of this is I'm only just now starting to listen to any sort of Taylor Swift music at all. I wasn't avoiding it, but I just had never really gotten around to it. And If you can't tell, I'm not a 16-year-old girl. I'm also not a lovesick 16-year-old girl. But I went back and listened to Taylor Swift's debut album that she wrote and released when she was like 15, 16 years old. And previously, I probably would have said, yeah, well, I mean, that's not for me. I'm not going to bother listening to that. There's not going to be anything there that I connect with. And, lyrically, after listening to it, lyrically, that's still pretty true. I didn't really connect with a whole lot of it as a 40-year-old man, but there was quite a bit that I could listen to there, and I could remember being 16. And I could think about, the way I felt in similar situations when I was that age. And I was able to sit there and listen and enjoy the music of it, enjoy the songwriting of it. And I got a lot out of it. And that's something that I probably in the past never would have given myself an opportunity to even try. So before you move on, before you go forward, sit and think about, how can I change my mindset to music? How can I change my approach to music? How can I be more open to a wide range of new things? And how can I meet music halfway instead of just sitting back and making music, do all the work and come to me? After you've got your mindset straight, my first real solid piece of advice or thing that I would recommend is to participate in a music listening project. Now, for me, one of the biggest struggles coming back to music was just the overwhelming variety and options of choices of music to listen to at any given time. It's kind of like Netflix, right? You sit down in the evening, you decide you're going to watch a movie or a TV show, but you end up spending more time flipping through all of the options and suggestions than you do actually watching something. That's the way I feel every time I open Spotify. And for me, that meant that I would spend more time just sitting there trying to find the right song or the right album or the right artist to fit my mood at the moment or whatever it was that I was doing at the time. And I just wouldn't end up listening to much of anything because I got so overwhelmed by that. The benefit of a music listening project is that those choices are made for you ahead of time. You never have to spend time thinking about what am I going to listen to next. You just pick the next thing on the list to listen to and you listen to it. And there are a whole bunch of different options for different kinds of music listening projects, different lengths of projects that you might want to choose from, but here are a few examples of ones that I'm doing. Personally, my biggest music listening project right now is I'm listening through Rolling Stone's list of the 500 greatest albums of all time. And it's a huge list. 500 albums is a lot of music, and it's something that's going to take me probably a couple of years. But the benefit of it is that I never really have to put much effort into thinking about what I'm going to listen to next. I know that if I just listen to album 419, the next thing that I'm going to listen to is album 418. Same thing, I'm listening through the 500 greatest songs of all time. That's a little bit of an easier task, but it's the same idea. If I just need a quick song to put on, I just put on the next song from the list. Another option is a deep dive into a specific genre that you may be interested in checking out and have never really gotten around to before. You may think, I want to try out some jazz music and find the top 20 jazz albums of all time or top 20 jazz songs or artists and just listen through those. Or you could choose to listen to the full discography of an artist. You might decide that you want to try and check out all of Bob Dylan's albums or all of Michael Jackson's albums. Personally, I've started listening to all of Taylor Swift's albums. But I think the big thing with a music listening project is that you want to pick something that's going to take a little bit of time. Not something that you're going to get through in a day or two, but something that might take, a couple of weeks, a couple of months, or, in the case of the 500 greatest albums of all time, that's going to take me a couple of years to get through. And personally, I have, like I said, a couple of different music listening projects going at once so that I have a couple of options. But it takes that huge range of options that you have just opening up Spotify or Apple Music or whatever and kind of narrows it down. I know that I'm either going to listen to, most likely, the newest Taylor Swift album on my list there, the next album on the 500 greatest albums of all time, the next song on the 500 greatest songs of all time. And if I'm all caught up on all of them, I still make time to listen to other things. But if I'm ever not sure what I want to listen to, I have one of those three things to pick from. Music listening projects were my biggest piece of advice for finding new music. Now, this one I think is going to be a little bit more short and sweet, which is set aside time specifically for listening to music. Personally, I got into the trap of, just putting on headphones or putting on music while I was doing other things. I would listen to music while I was puttering around the house doing some household chores. I would put on music while I'm in the car. You know, that's good time to listen to music, but it's hard to connect with music when you're busy doing other things. So I think one of the most helpful things for me is I've decided to set aside, at least personally, I do 30 minutes a day where I sit down. I'm in this chair with, you know, I've got speakers right here. I sit down and I just listen to music. I try to give myself time to listen to a full album. It's not always easy depending on the length of an album, but set aside time where that's all you're doing. You're not scrolling through social media. You're not, you know, doing chores around the house or driving. You're just sitting and absorbing the music that's being played. I just think it really helps to take music from being that background thing that you have going on while you're doing other stuff and moving it into a place where it is the specific thing that you're focusing on doing in that moment. And to build off of that previous point of setting aside time specifically for listening to music, try listening with a purpose. This is another aspect that kind of goes along with the idea of don't wait for music to come to you. Find a way to meet it halfway, right? Find a purpose for what you're listening to. Pick up on an instrument. One of my favorite things to do is I like to listen to funk music, and when I listen to funk, I'm listening to the bass. I'm kind of tuning out all of the other instruments, and I'm listening to what the bass is doing because it's always so much fun to listen to that instrument. In different genres of music, it might be a different instrument. You might want to pick up on the piano part in certain music or a guitar part in a different kind of music. You can also learn to count time signatures. That's always fun, especially for odd timed music. But really this boils down to be an active listener. And I think this is, again, the thing that'll help the most with meeting music halfway and finding a way to connect with music that you might not have found otherwise. And finally, the last point, and the one that I think is just as helpful as the music listening projects, is to join a music community. I mean, everything is better with friends, and music is no exception. And finding a group of people who are similarly interested in listening to music and talking about music and sharing music is going to be so helpful. If you can find a community of people who are going to be excited about music with you, who are going to make recommendations or be interested in your recommendations, and do all of that while being open and welcoming and not gatekeeping music, I think is probably the best way to go about finding new music that you connect with. Of course, that's hard to do though, right? It's hard to find those sorts of communities, which is why that's what I'm trying to build. That's what I'm trying to build here on my YouTube channel. It's what I'm trying to build over on TikTok, and it's specifically what I'm trying to build on Discord. I want to build a community that looks and feels like home for any type of music fan. And this is the kind of sales pitch of my video here. Down in the description of this video, you'll find a link to my Discord channel. And I'm just kind of getting things started there. If you click that link now and you join, you're going to be one of the very first people to join this community. But it is something that I'm hoping that we can build together as a place for people who are interested in discovering new music, and especially people who are coming back to music after kind of losing their passion and are trying to rebuild it again, a place for all of us to come together and talk about and share what we're listening to. So before you head out and go watch another video, click that link down in the description and come join us on Discord. So those are my 5 biggest tips for reconnecting with music, for rekindling that passion for music. But what I'd like to know now is, what music listening project are you going to do? Leave a comment and let me know. Are you going to do a deep dive into a certain genre? Are you going to listen to a top however many albums list? Are you going to listen through an artist's discography? What artist are you going to listen to? I'd love to hear what your music listening project is going to be. Otherwise, like the video. It really does help out. Subscribe to the channel because I'm putting out music content every week. And until next time, I'm Kyle, and I've got some music to listen to.